Hi everyone, it's Tamara here with another card making tutorial. I'm again using the WonderingWabbit Christmas stamp set Step Right Up to Christmas for this week's card making tutorial. I thought this gorgeous little elf would look so cute, high wiring it on the sentiment banner that comes with the set, and also I used one of the sentiments that also comes with the set as well. I've already printed my elf and my banner out onto some Copic XPress cardstock, ready for colouring, so we'll set that aside. I'll also be using this scalloped frame die to go around our card, as well as the My Favourite Things Circle Celebration background stamp, because I thought it looked like kind of spotlights or lights that are glowing behind our elf while he's on his high wire. As this background stamp is foam based, we can remove our foam from our Misti, and I've just put some kind of removable kind of tape on the base of my Misti so that it holds my cardstock in place. I've taken off the backing of our background stamp and just lined that up over our cardstock. I'll just be using my Versacolor stamp pad in Canary yellow to stamp this up. So I'm just doing a light coverage of our circle stamp, just making sure I'm getting plenty of ink on all our circles. And now, excuse my kind of thing from rattling around, but I'm just going to stamp that up. Obviously it's missing in places, so I'm just going to run our stamp over again. And because I've actually taped that panel down, it's going to stamp this in exactly the right place because it hasn't moved our panel at all. So I'm making sure I've got another smooth coverage, and we'll give that a good press down, just pressing in those areas that it wasn't kind of going in. And I missed a little bit then, so I can just close that up, and I've got a good coverage there, so we'll set that aside to dry. Now I'll have all the colours just up on the top left hand of the screen if you want to note any of the colours I'm using in this tutorial. So I'm just going in with my lighter skin colour first, my E000, to just work out where all my shadows are going to be. I'm just going to have the light coming from the top left hand corner, kind of shining down onto our little elf as he's doing his high rope walking. So I'm just putting in my E04, which will be my darkest colour in this combination, to get a bit of shadow around where his hat will throw a little bit of shadow, and obviously the back of his face will be in shadow from those lights, and the bottoms of his hands, and just where those fingers fold over. Now I did forget to put a little bit of darkness in his ear and just under his nose, because obviously that will throw a little bit of shadow as well. So I've just fixed that up quickly. I'll bring in our E01 to blend out that E11, just slowly working up to the top where our highlight will be, just making sure to work out all those colours. The next colour in our combo will be E00. And I'm just leaving the tops of those ears and that left hand side of his face and tops of his fingers for our highlight colour, which was that initial colour we put down, the E000. Now I wanted to add a little bit of colour to these cheeks because he's exerting himself, but he's also having a great time. So I put my R21 down, blend that out with my R00, and then just bring that lightest colour in from our skin colour just to blend that out and make that nice and smooth. Now obviously there's not a lot of hair showing from under his hat, so I'm only going to use a couple of colours for this combo. I put the darkest colour in first, and our lightest will be the E33. And now I'm just going to bring that darkest colour in just to make sure we've got that bit of contrast coming from where that will be in shadow, which is our E49. I just used one of the skin colours for his like rosy cheeks for his tongue, because obviously there's not much of that showing. Now I've gone in with our lightest colour for our combo for his outfit, so I'm going to do his hat and his outfit and his leggings in the same colours, so we're not grabbing out a heap of colours. So I've gone in initially with the lightest colour just to work out where my shadows will be. So he's a little bushy, front of his hat will be throwing a bit of shadow, as well as that present, and at the very back of his hat will be in shadow as well. So we're just going to slowly blend out our colours with our next colour in the combo, which is YG05. And YGO3 is next, and then we'll bring back that initial color we put in to work out our shadows, which is the YG01 as our lightest color in our combo. And I'm going to do the same for his outfit. Obviously underneath his arms and this back arm will be in shadow, as well as the back part of his shirt, and all the lightest parts will be on that left hand side. So now I'm just going in with the darkest color, which will be BG99. So where that little collar is, that will be in shadow, but I've only just done it on the back too, and we'll get lighter as the colors throw a bit of shadow from that little collar. So the next color is the GO7. So you'll see I've just gone over a little bit more on that collar to throw a shadow, but it's not going to be as dark as that back section. So we want to alternate our contrast there, and that belt will also be throwing a bit of shadow. So I did initially with that BG9 and then moved that over to the G marker. So next is YG05 to blend that out. So slowly working into our highlight color. I forgot that arm, so we're going back in with that. And then our next color was that YG03 to blend out the 05. And then we'll bring that lightest color in, the YG01 now, to finish off our blending. So the top of that arm will be bright, as well as the front of his shirt, and a little bit onto the top of that left arm, or right arm, sorry. So now we're just going to use that same color combo for the stripes. So I'm just making sure I'm alternating colors, so I don't do two stripes the same, because we're going to do the yellow combo for these. So we see all the backs of his legs away from that light source will be in shadow, so that's where I'm putting our darker shading. And I'm going to slowly blend that out with the G07. Bring in that YG05 and slowly blend that out. And then we'll bring in our lightest color for this combo. We're not going to worry, or we'll just have maybe a little bit of that YG01 just right on that corner. Obviously the brightest part will be on this side. And that's our blend done. Now we're going to get our yellow done. So for the shadow color, I'm going to use V01 for our yellow. It's a nice kind of shadowy color that we can use to add some color and shadow and contrast to our yellow combo. So the next color is Y18. Blend that out with the Y13. I would have done Y15, but I haven't got a re-inker for it yet, and it needs re-inking, so I've got that on order. And the last color in our combo will be Y00 to blend that out as our highlight color. Now we want to add a little bit of texture to this hat. So as I've mentioned, everything on that right hand side is going to be in shadow. So we're going to do more dots down the bottom and also on that back section of his hat and his little jacket. So I'm just going with the lightest color, the C00, to put that, work out where my shadow will be. And now we're going in with the darkest color in this combo, which is going to be my C3, to add the actual shadow portions of those dots. So just really doing some very light stippling, just using the very tip of that marker to get our little dots in here. So you always just add a little bit at first, because you can always come back in. It's much harder to take it out if you put too much in initially. So you'll see me coming in with the next color, the C1 now. But at the end, I come back in. I did miss the C3 on this little back section of his little bauble. And the C1 again. And we'll bring that lightest marker, the C00, in again to finish off. So again, I'm going very dark at that back and then bringing it out to lighter at that front section that will be getting the light. So as I mentioned, I just wanted to do the same color from this little package. So it's going to be a white package with a green bow. So we see that bow strings will be throwing some shadow, as well as the lid of that box. And obviously the back of this box will be in shadow as well, but we still want it to look white. So we're not going to fill it all in with color because we want that white cardstock to show that it is white, but we want to make sure we put some shadows in there. Now I'm just coloring up the ribbon, so at the base and at the very back will be quite dark of our ribbon, and as well as where it throws the shadows over, where it folds over in the center. So we'll blend that out, same color combo that we used for the outfit and the hat. And our next color will be YG03, so I'm just leaving that a little bit up the top for that lightest color, the YG01, for our highlight. Now for his belt and his shoes, I'm going to do the same color. So I'm using my warm gray markers. So W8 will be my darkest marker. So obviously the back of that shoe will be in shadow, as well as where these boots fold over. You'll see some lines that the artist has drawn. So that makes it easy to kind of create some little folds and a little bit of interest in those boots. And then we're just leaving that very top of his boots so that we can put our highlight color in, which will be our W4. So just blend that out. Obviously that little buckle will throw a bit of shadow, and then we'll finish coloring in those boots for a nice little highlight. So I wanted a leather look, so that's why I've gone warm grays for this. And then we won't forget that buckle. The darkest color will be Y28. Blend that out with the Y18 and that Y13 again to finish that off. So now that he's all colored up, I'm going to get started on our banner. So I'm throwing a bit of shadow in with BV01 to get a bit of a contrast color in. So obviously where that banner folds over will be in shadow, as well as where it's kind of tucked in there. And I want it looking like the top section or the middle section is going to be the most exposed. So that's going to be where our lightest color will be. So now I'm going over that purple and just moving that out a little bit further with my E33. So you'll get both, like pretty much like two colors in that combo, because obviously that purple is going to darken that E33 up. Our next color will be E31 to blend out that 33, and just leaving that little bit of space in the middle for our lightest color to show that that is sticking up, and at the very end of that banner as well. So our lightest color in this combo will be E30. So we'll finish off our blend, flicking out from both sides, so we get a nice smooth blend out from either side of that banner. Now we don't want to forget this gorgeous little holly and berries on this side, so I'm just going to pop the darkest colors in down the bottom of these leaves, and obviously where the berries will be throwing a bit of shadow. And I'm doing again the same combo that we use for our outfit, and that way we're not grabbing out a heap of markers to do our coloring today, and everything ties in really nicely. So we're just that YG05 and our YG03 to finish that off. So there's not a lot of space there, so I forgo the YG01 for this combo. And then for our berries, we just want to do a very different contrast. So I'm just doing an R89 and then just a very small amount of R24, just leaving that little bit of white up the top so that it looks like there's a shine on our berries. Now with our frame, I've cut a bit of yellow cardstock a little bit bigger than our panel and run that through my die cutting machine. So you could cut all the panels out with yellow, but I had some white cardstock that I wanted to get rid of. So I've cut the bottom bases because I'm going to do a stacked frame around our little elf. So I'm just going to layer these up. So white on white first for underneath, and then we'll stick that yellow layer on the very top. So just making sure that's all lined up, that the glue's nice and spread around. Then we're going to do the same thing by adding our glue all the way around for our yellow panel to go on the top, and that just gives us that nice bit of dimension without having to worry about foam tape. So again, just lining that up. So slowly just work your fingers around, and that way it helps you line everything up perfectly. So I've allowed that to dry, and now I just want to cut this panel down so it fits in perfectly behind our frame. So that we want to center those circles in the middle. So I'm going to grab out my ruler and just work out exactly how much needs to be removed either side, and obviously top and bottom. Make sure I've got that amount in my head, and then I can use my tonic trimmer to get that trimmed down to size. So just working out, because I want it even on both sides. So just trim up that side, and now do the same on the opposite side, and that fits perfectly behind that yellow frame. Now we want to get that frame attached to our panel, so it's better to put the glue on the actual panel itself, and that way you know that you're getting it in exactly the right spot and you're not going to get any unwanted glue onto your surface. So we're just going to line that panel up, make sure that is correct all the way around, that circles are centered, and just set that under a book to dry. Now while that's drying, I'm going to grab out my foam tape and foam squares and get some tape popped on the back of our little elf and also our sentiment banner, and that way it's going to fit on nicely behind our stacked yellow frame. So just trimming these down to size. Obviously this little hat will need support, as well as that little present at the top. And for his hands, I'm just going to use some of these little circle dots that fit perfectly behind his hands there to give them support. So, and also these little shoes down the bottom. So just make sure that he's well supported once he goes onto our card front. And then we'll grab out our banner and get the same with our foam tape. And then just on that smaller banner part, I'll put a couple of those circles that we've got to make sure that they're nice and supported, they don't get bent in the mail. And also we just need that little bit for the holly, so I'm just going to trim one of those in half, and that will hold that holly up for us as well. So now that our little frame panel is dry, I've cut and scored a white card base, and we'll get that now attached to our front of our card base. So grabbed out my glue again, get a nice little amount of glue on the front, line that up so we've got a nice border around the edge. And again, I'll set that under a book to dry. I'm going to make sure I'm putting this on the right way and not upside down, and then I'll grab out our little elf and banner. So I've just popped our elf in there so I know where this banner needs to sit to give him enough room to stand on it at the top. So I've lined that up nicely with my tweezers, make sure it's even on both sides, and then we can get our little elf to be standing on top. So just kind of have him resting right there with that little foot over our holly. And this is the finished card for this tutorial. This elf is so gorgeous. I love that little fun, look on his face. And I thought he'd be perfect standing on this sentiment banner with the holly that comes with the stamp set. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.